Hello. So today I'm going to be talking about Babel by RF Kuang. Now, I have never read any of RF Kuang's previous works. I believe the Poppy War trilogy was a fairly popular fantasy trilogy. I haven't read any of that, but I was very intrigued by Babel. It felt like it would suit the kind of autumnal mood that I was in. I do like a little bit of dark academia now and again, so I thought I would give this one a go. The themes of this book would be language, politics, colonialism, translation, the futility of translation, identity, and probably immigration. We start the book in Canton, China, where Professor Lovell, is looking around and he finds an orphaned boy. The boy's name in this book is Robin, but that is a name that he picks for himself when he comes over to the United Kingdom. The boy is taken because he is orphaned, his whole family have died of cholera, and he is taken back to the UK because he has a particular talent in which he is quite good at speaking English. And also, obviously, he can speak Mandarin and Cantonese. And to Professor Lovell, this is a very, very needed talent. Robin is then brought up in England and he studies languages with Professor Lovell at home. He gets a tutor who is brought in, all so that he can eventually one day go to Oxford University, where the majority of this novel is based. And he will in fact be studying at Babel, a big tower in the middle of Oxford, where translation is used in a kind of magical way. Upon starting university, he meets three other characters. First, he meets Remy, who becomes his best friend, then Victoire and Letty, and all of these characters in some way are immigrants. And that's all I think I can really say without giving away spoilers. The rest of the novel is about their studies, about what they learn, about the magic of language and translation. The magic system within this works directly through translation. So there is the silver bars that kind of power or can do many things. They can heal, they can power locomotives, they can create electricity for street lamps. And the way that you create power or energy in these bars is by taking two words from a kind of a different language or different languages with different meanings and infusing them into the silver bar, and thus the contradiction of those words and the similarities of those words create power. Now, I'm not doing justice to how that magic system works there. There's a few other steps that go into it that I'm not going to waste your time with. But that's kind of the gist of it. And really what we have now is a story of colonialism in which the English, the professors, the academics are holding on to all this power and knowledge for monetary gain. And they are stealing language from other countries in order for the benefit of them. And they do it through the justification of giving these children, these immigrants who have become English, they're now dual identity, especially like Robin, who has lived in the United Kingdom from a very young age. He says he's giving them a better life, but in essence what we're looking at is this kind of, language is being stolen and used for the monetary gain of the English. Overall, this book was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I've got to admit it. There was parts about it that I really, really, really enjoyed, and parts about it that I just felt were a little weak. Now, it is a dark academia, it is a fantasy book, and I think Kuang does an incredible job at balancing the entertainment value and the sort of the thought-provoking political aspects of it. At no point are you not kind of sort of invested in going along with the story, and at no point is the politic of this work not shining through. And that's my first issue with this book. I feel like Kuang really, really, really wants the reader to understand the politics within this piece. So what she's doing is she's telling rather than showing. And that's my kind of issue with the writing style in general. I think the prose is pretty decent. I think it really wraps you up. It flows really well together. However, there are these moments where two characters might have a conversation or they might have a debate or an argument, and you get what is happening. You understand the politic at play. But then Kuang decides to, after it, have a character explain everything about what just happened. And this book does that constantly. And to the point where you go, I get it. I know what you're trying to say. Can we just carry on with the story? Because you're just going too far. And that was my issue. It just pushed the politic too far. It feels like maybe Kuang thinks that fantasy readers or dark academia readers aren't quite smart enough to handle the subtlety of a kind of politic that's sort of underlayering everything that's happening. And we are. We get it. It just wasn't needed. And at times it was so much that it felt like I was reading a bit of a YA story. Now, that's nothing against YA stories, but as we know, within a young adult story, often certain elements of it need to be over explained. Just because you might have very young people reading these books who just don't quite get it, and they need that, and I think that's great, and if you can do that well, brilliant. But in this, it's an adult book. It's about language. It's about the beauty of language. Some of the ideas and topics discussed in this are amazing, and it was just that one little thing that was kind of dragging it back. The book has some twists and turns, which some you can predict, some you can't predict, but I do feel like another failing of the book is that as soon as it starts, you know exactly where it's heading. There is no mystery in what the outcome of what this is going to be, but there are some twists and turns leading to that outcome, which was good because I didn't, at points I felt like, is this just going to play out exactly as I think? And it didn't, which I will give it thumbs up for. One of the other failings of this book, and considering it's over 500 pages, around 550 pages, is I felt like the secondary characters, the Remy, the Letty, the Victoire, they were given time. They were well-rounded. We were given backstory. We were giving a little bit of history into them. But it felt almost a little bit thrown in. There are sections of this book where Robin will just be thinking and go, that was the best summer we had, where we truly became a family. Well, can I experience some of those things, please? I never at any point really got to find that friendship growing between them through actual moments, chapters, scenes, action taking place. Now, I know Kuang had given herself a lot to do in this book. And actually, to do that job, it would have had to be even longer than it already is. But there are some turns in the work, and I think I would have cared more about those turns if I'd spent a little bit more time sort of connecting to them as a friendship group. I really wanted to just sort of know them all really well, and I did know them, and they were given little snippets of backstory, but I must admit those backstory moments felt a little bit sort of thrown in, almost like an afterthought, almost like I need to give a bit more grounding to this character, so here you go, rather than it coming through in the actual journey taking place. I really loved diving into the world of language in this book. I think if you enjoy language, if you enjoy books that deal with sort of books or language and reading and writing, then you're really going to enjoy this. I love the idea of translation, and one of the things that I was getting from this is that idea of language can never, ever, ever truly be shared. There are some things within language that will always make us the other, but in fact we should embrace that otherness rather than trying to force the two to make sense. There is something within this book that's telling me that we don't always need to understand everything, and we don't need to understand things and make a commodity of those things. In fact, what I really learned about this was the idea of that, especially with like Cantonese or Mandarin, there are some things that we are never, ever, ever going to be able to explain or understand because it is so entrenched in a culture or a community that we don't need to. And that was when this book was at its highest for me, really. I know I'm repeating what I'm saying, but that idea and that use of language and how impossible it is to understand, and that kind of colonialism within language and in general, I just thought was really smart, really clever, and a really nice thing to explore in a kind of fantasy novel with a magic system. Now, the magic system isn't used that much. It kind of just underlies everything, and I think that could have been pushed just a little bit further, especially for the more fantasy heavy enthusiasts who are picking up this book. But at no point did the magic system or the lack of use of it really damage the story being told. I forgot to say at the start that this book is set in 1936. Quick edit, this book is set in 1836, not 1936. And what we have is a kind of alternative Oxford, but while still embracing some of the history around Oxford at that time, or the United Kingdom at that time, and language and authors and the use of translation at that time. Kuang does a really nice way of layering in footnotes, not dense footnotes. I know when someone says there's footnotes in this book, you're going to be like, oh, do the footnotes go on for pages and pages? No, they're just nicely there succinctly to kind of give the reader a little bit more into what is happening, a little bit more of the history. But then at times those footnotes go into the fantasy realm in which it's a completely invented history. And I absolutely loved that sort of blend of the two. Apparently Kuang wrote this book in a year, and for that, my jaw drops. Well, bloody Done. Overall, I'm going to now stop rambling. This book is like a 3.5 stars for me. There's just too many things that are kind of pulling it down for it to kind of hit anywhere near like my favourites of the year list, or for me to creep into that kind of excellent category. I mean, I always consider that like 4 stars is excellent, 5 stars is outstanding, 3 stars is good, 3.5 is like very good, and yeah, and anything below that, like 2 is poor, 1 is atrocious, and if I give it a 0.5, it's abhorrent. I think it's for a very particular reader. I think for most readers, this will be kind of like a 3-star sort of book. But I think for a select few, people who love fantasy, people who absolutely adore dark academia, people who love the trope of kids going to school and learning, and that they're special because they have a kind of gift and they're able to kind of explore that gift through the educational system, which this book also covers really nicely as well, the kind of how the hierarchy of education and who are the gatekeepers to education. It's as I keep going back and forth because it's got so much going on. She's packed a lot into it whilst keeping it entertaining. But I still do think that most people will see this as kind of a 3-star book, and people who are into that kind of dark academia thing will be like, wow, 5 stars. So there you go. Babel. Mixed bag, but very much glad I read it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have watched, I'll hit the old thumbs up or whatever. It always helps me out. And thank you to everyone who has subscribed. It's been brilliant that so many people have sort of subscribed recently. That is fantastic. So thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying. Right. I'll see you all on the next one. Bye.